did that here years ago. Plants don't worry about where it comes from.
So I did one of those.
You know, it's like when clover you get in
Smeary.
produce,
I don't get covered in
it, and it just releases it. Boom.
Okay, everybody. Morena, good morning. It's just
Morning.
on 10:30, so we will get into this. We will begin with our karakia whakataka te hao. Whakataka te hao.
Ki uru, whakataki te hau ki te toa, kia mā kina ki tuta, kia mā tana tana ki tai, kia ia ki ana te atakura, e tio, e oka, e hau. Ki te uro, witi whakamawa ki tina, tina, hue, tāke.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to all our guests this morning. We have Councillor Littlewood on Zoom. Charlotte, can you hear us? All good. And apologies from Councillor Cran. Can somebody please, I'll move those apologies. Tom. So, on a somber note, to begin, I'd like to acknowledge, obviously, the passing of Councillor Daisy Lean. Over 30 years as a councillor at the Regional Council and almost 50 years in local government. So huge service and services to our community outside of that. So we could perhaps have a stand and have a minute's silence. I'd also like, we haven't had a chance yet, to acknowledge another long-serving councillor's recognition to Neil's QSM for services to the community. OSM?
No, it's Officer of the New Zealand Board of Merit, actually.
Okay, what's the, how do you say that?
ONZN.
Okay, that one. So well done there, well deserved. And now we are going to move into, we have a couple of deputations. Firstly, we have Rachel from Ngāti Ruanui. If you could step up, please. Oh, yeah, there's a mic there. About 5 minutes. But that's fine, and then we can maybe ask some questions at the end. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Rachel ana taka ingoa, a kaua haere o te runanga o Ngāti Ruanui. Our maunga, our moana, haroha mai, is under threat from a company that has already been rejected by the Supreme Court. As you know, Trans-Tasman Resources CB mining application is back under the fast track approval scheme. This process bypasses and sidelines iwi and undermines treaty obligations. We understand some councillors are hesitant to publicly oppose CB mining. We've been told that if a council declares opposition, it may affect its ability to put forward a person for the EPA panel. If ministers like Shane Jones and Chris Bishop can publicly promote CB mining, then how is it fair that iwi, councils and communities stay silent to avoid bias? Minister Jones has called opposition emotional nonsense. Minister Bishop has dismissed economic and environmental and Māori concerns. Yet they have created the Fast Track Act that oversees a process with no public hearings or appeals. Councils have a statutory obligation under the Local Government Act 2002 to promote the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of communities now and into the future. Under the RMA, the Treaty of Waitangi Principles, they must engage meaningful with tangata whenua and consider the effects of the activities on Māori relationships with the land and why. Why is water? The Fast Track Approvals Act 2024 doesn't override a council's duty to express concern or advocate for regional interests. In fact, staying silent could expose the council to community backlash for failing to act in the public interest. Also, council doesn't lose legal standings by opposing a project. It risks its integrity and public mandate by saying nothing. What happens when the mining goes ahead? The damage begins. And this council is remembered not for what it tried to do, but what it chose not to say. Councillors, your job is not to manage your relationships with Wellington, it's to represent the people of Taranaki. You will not be judged by ministers, you will be judged by your community who live with the decisions you make today. We don't believe you need to stay neutral to participate. And if being truthful about your position excludes you from decision making, then that process already is rigged against the people. The science against this application remains deeply flawed. There is no credible baseline data. TTR experts from overseas have never set foot in Taranaki. The economic case is not proven benefit to the community of Taranaki. You may not agree with everything we say, but today you have a choice to remain silent or to choose integrity to speak out, knowing that leadership requires courage. Te Rūnanga o Ngāti Ranui urge you to publicly support a motion opposing seabed mining. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Rachel. Just before you, does anybody have any questions, comments?
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, we have Fiona from Protect Our Moana.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Fiona Young and I'm born and raised here in the rolling hills of Taranaki, and I now live on the coast where we see blue whales in the last few weeks coming past our home. I'm from Protect Our Moana Taranaki, a local group of mana whenua and European descent tangata tiriti working together. As friends and allies, we share a deep love and care for our oceans and are part of a much wider movement for the protection of our moana to stop seabed mining before it causes irreversible harm and a dangerous national and global precedent. Not to underestimate the incredible impact of the decisions that we make together in Taranaki with regard to this. We've been organising really very well attended peaceful community activations, paddle outs that have attracted more than 1,000 of people up and down the West Coast. And this is just a tip of the iceberg as far as the community concern and opposition to seabed mining, not only here in Taranaki, but up and down the West Coast and into the Pacific. Because if it were to go ahead here and get a green light to move forward, it would be opening up this dangerous precedent, putting all of our Pacific Ocean at risk. I come here as well today, again, after having spoken some weeks ago, in light as well of the TTR presentations that happened at the New Plymouth District Council last week, and then again quietly emerged also at the South Taranaki District Council. This was really concerning to see the outright dishonesty represented in the so-called science and facts. So the credibility of this company is one that ought to be highly cautioned, because they are presenting information that is very misleading and manipulative and dishonest is the way that I saw that, and many others. One example of that being the so-called bog standard video film. That's Site 66. It actually shows that at the beginning, and it's presented in a way to be within the mining site or give that understanding. But it's been evidenced, and I'm sorry I don't have those maps, but I can send them to you, that highlights Site 66 is actually quite some kilometres out of the actual mining site that's been proposed. So it's trying to play people as fools to think that that kind of information is accurate. We know that the area off here is an incredibly precious, unique marine environment, and so again, I come here to speak to your conscience and your role and your responsibility in community leadership towards upholding that protection, that care for your communities and our natural world. David Attenborough has recently highlighted in his film Oceans and spoke outwardly at the United Nations World Ocean Conference in France, the importance of protecting our ocean environments before it's too late. They are incredibly significant for us to care for, not to create new extractive economies with harmful mining. In the TTR presentation last week, there was a brush over, there was a screen that highlighted all these different environmental monitoring, suggesting that they had done all these different marine and seabird monitoring and all of that, but I'm sure you're well aware already, and if you're not, to be aware that they have not done these baseline monitoring. They have not done that for our ocean birds. They have not done that in any considerable way for the marine life, and in the example of marine mammals. There was a note of no Maui dolphins, no other whales that were within the mining site, but the information that they're drawing on is with regard to dock sightings that have been reported. No endeavour to have any thorough look of what's actually there. So to say absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Dr. Lee Torres of Oregon State University and her team have been studying these animals since 2014. You're probably aware of this. And she's published papers with this as well. And she has noted that, to quote, these animals, the pygmy blue whales, are relying on the Taranaki bight for feeding opportunities. So in the spring and summer, when there's upwelling and bringing productivity in, that creates food for the whales in the form of krill. And then we've also documented calves in the area, which mean that the mothers are bringing their calves back to this region to teach them that the South Taranaki bight is an important area for their livelihood, for them to live. In the past year, they've noted 68 whales in the bight. And there is so much more activity in that area than has been evidenced and highlighted within the TTR application, and certainly not present in their presentation. There is also very much the concern of, it is a complex marine ecosystem. There is not any current accuracy to the modelling when there's so many variables. Even the some of the work that's been done looking at a 7-second wave interval. For any surfers in the room, you might be aware that that's quite a small situation in our ocean when we're known as a surfing mecca, and often it's a bigger interval. So again, there's a lot of greater depth that needs to be taken care of as far as looking and understanding our marine environment. So it would be negligent towards staying neutral or silent on this when so much is at risk. So with that, it would be a step back, and again, in tautaku to all of what Rachel has shared today, with regard to the TRC reputation and to maintain and grow positive relationships and social licence here within the region and further, it's important for the TRC to oppose seabed mining and uphold the responsibility to care for our natural world and our community. It would be a step back to not oppose this project and therefore to mitigate, to not be allowing room for a more sustainable future for our region, which is possible. Again, climate change is likely to exacerbate any changes as well in the marine environment. Again, it is so complex and it is fragile. We must care for it. So on that, I again come here to speak to your conscience, to be upholding the protection of our moana. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you again.
Thank you for the presentation. Does anyone have any comments, feedback at this point in time?
I'll ask a question.
Yes.
Look, as far as this is concerned, all the points you make have a lot of validity to listen to them. But I just asked a question, which is one that you asked last time, which is more important at this stage in the journey, to make sure that somebody on Taranaki Regional Council is actually a panellist, or to take a position immediately and perhaps preclude that?
Look, I stand in solidarity with Rachel and so many as far as the need to have an opposition on this. I think what I can say to that process is that it speaks to a lack of fair democracy, whereby a genuine voice can't be had, and so I just leave it at that at this point.
Yeah, and I appreciate how strong you feel, and a lot of people would agree with you.
Yeah.
All I'm really saying, though, is that it doesn't preclude us from taking a position later on, but certainly at this stage of the journey, if we then take a position now, then the persons from here would be on. The other thing is that a lot of the actual discussion about this is based on science and so forth, so we need to have the best scientific brains from this place actually feeding in. And to do that, we have to take a process which we're taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, May, what I bring and speak, this is a journey that we're on, and as far as where we come to as a region to be bringing forth that opposition is the request. There is a journey, and that we can bring forth that opposition is the request.
Thank you, Fiona. Anita.
Kia ora, Fiona, ngā mihi. The video that you referred to that was shown by TTR at their presentation, is that available in the public forum? Is there a link?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that might be possible to access, and I know, again, as offered, can send out the map where it's been highlighted, actually where Site 66 is sitting outside of the proposed.
So it would be helpful if you could find the link to that video and send us that information in correlation, if you can.
I'll do my best. I'll
Kia
dig
ora.
into that one.
Thank
There
you.
was a lot of reference to the presentation that TTR did to New Plymouth District Council in our workshop. I would be surprised if that's not still available online. I know it was live. It should be there.
Yes, yeah,
So
absolutely. So
might be a good idea just to encourage people to have a look at that
yeah,
on the NPD's website, and then obviously make up your own minds.
yeah.
I think that would be because we weren't there and it wasn't presented to us. So.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and to highlight, there was such a shocking, blatant disregard for mana whenua, and really a testament to lack of relationship building there as well. Yeah. Be prepared.
Yeah, thank you. Are you presenting to MPDC later today?
We are.
You are.
Yeah, as they have a notion of modus towards opposing seabed mining.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on a minute.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, do you know what the criteria are for the fast track panel and who is on that panel? Is there any indication yet who's on that panel?
I'd like to ask my Rachel.
So only the panel hasn't been confirmed, so there's only the convener has been confirmed.
Oh, who is that? Oh, yeah. Okay. And is there any criteria on which?
Oh, you have to be environmental, chief lawyer, who's in the oil and gas industry at this present time. So I'm guessing that everyone that would be on the panel would have to have a legal, environmental background. Otherwise, can't support anyone.
Donald, perhaps we can ask for an update from staff, just when the
Later on.
as the minutes to the policy and planning come up,
Yep.
because that's the only place this arises.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if Rachel might respond to Neil's question. Do you have anything to add to Neil's question about the process and the panel?
Process. I suppose the ad is probably part of my 40 rules around. I do believe that it shouldn't matter. The ministers have already confirmed their bias towards wanting seabed mining. What difference does it make to you guys opposing the seabed mining? That's our view. However, I do understand where you're coming from, and I do understand. But for the messaging, it would be nice for our people to know that you will make a stance after you appointed the panel, if that's what your stance is.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it'd be really good for our comms to go out and say, you guys are not opposing at this point because you're appointing to the EPA, but you will make a statement in a month or so time, so that we actually have that comms to go out to go forward as a solution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we did discuss that. We had quite a robust and full debate and discussion at the policy and planning meeting. Benita will be able to update you then when we come to confirming those minutes. But it was very much along those lines. We have some important roles to play, and I think obviously there's appointing somebody to the panel, and there's also providing comments to the panel, and then there's if it does go ahead, then there is setting the rules and regulations around. And at that point where we are providing comments to the panel is when we will have our scientific and our economic and our all of our information from our officers, which will feed into the comments. And at that
Are you going to
time,
share your scientific information out to iwi?
At that point in time,
and community?
council will be able to make a decision whether or not they are opposing.
We just think it's really key to have someone in the room when the cake is being cut. if you like to
Yeah.
say it that way.
Yeah.
I will ask that question on your behalf when we get to it.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
And again,
Thank you. Thank you.
total. Thank you.
Okay, so I just need a resolution to receive the two deputations from.
I'm happy to move.
Yeah.
Second.
Move it and a second. Thank you very much. Next item, we have confirmation of ordinary council meeting minutes from the 13th of May. That is on
Ngā
page
mihi.
I'll
six.
move, Chair.
Thank you. Second up. Neil, thank you very much. Is there any items within or anything, any corrections or anything anybody wishes to discuss? Appear to be none. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Next up, we have the receipt of the Ops and Reg Committee meeting minutes. Susan, any comments?
No, I consider them to be a true and accurate record.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Councillor Davey has moved a couple of recommendations there, but I don't see him on the attendance register.
Okay, I'm sure that we can fix that. Thank you for pointing that
I,
out.
I hope he was there.
Would
He
you
is.
I'm pretty sure.
you continue with it?
That's a Dorian.
I've got a picture here.
Someone's using my name, are they?
Who's moved? Oh, so it's moved. I'll second that. All those in favour? Anything else from within? Yeah.
Yeah, and can I ask the about the minutes?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was not able to be at that meeting, and I'm sorry for that. But the summary of dairy farm synthetic nitrogen application report, I have always had a concern that this is a waste of bureaucratic time. 190 is not a scientific kilos of N, of synthetic N, it's not a scientific level. And we're collecting data that goes nowhere, tells us nothing, and achieves nothing at the end. I'd like us to start a process to object to central government that this limit is removed and this part of reporting is removed from our mandates.
So how do you want to proceed with that? Obviously, we're just accepting the minutes here.
Yeah.
What are you asking for?
Well, my suggestion would be that we actually prepare a report to next P&P with that regard.
P&P or Ops and Reg?
Well, it's a policy decision, really, rather than a monitoring thing.
You're going to be getting, which I think maybe where Mr. Kittle's going, a submission on the national direction around freshwater at the next P&P committee meeting.
Yep.
So that would provide a vehicle for you to, although it's not explicitly part of the
It
EPS,
is, through you, Chair, it is one of the things they are consulting on whether the limit should be removed.
Okay.
So there's a prime opportunity for us to work
so it's
through
in that.
It's in that process,
Okay.
which was signalled at the last P&P committee meeting on
Yep.
that agenda.
All right. Yep.
So we can pick it up when
Yep.
through that next P&P committee agenda,
Yeah.
through that process. Now, if you've got some scientific evidence to back up your statements that there is no science behind it, I'm sure
But how do you have
Ms.
science when there is none?
Matthews would welcome your input to help ensure that she has a comprehensive coverage of the science you're referring to.
Chair, I think that's important too. I mean, I sat here and I sort of said to myself, but why? You're making a statement that it's not, but where's the evidence to do that? So I think that's important if we're going to support what you're asking for. We need to have some evidence of that. I mean, the 190 is there. Why isn't it any good? Why is it a waste of time to farmers? Why is it? I mean, it's capped for a reason.
No, it's not.
Please give us some why.
It's not kept for a reason. It's kept because somebody thought that it should be 190.
Oh, well, let's not have a debate about that right now, please.
It's not a
Finbar
debate,
can
I
deal with that. Neil,
I
you've got a
just want
question.
to ask Finbar, I guess, what does happen to this information? Does it go anywhere?
Oh, that's a good question, Councillor. I will have a chat with Jared about how it is used. I mean, the primary thing in terms of the information is that you shouldn't breach it. It is a compliance, it is a regulatory tool to say that you shouldn't be higher than this, and if you are, you are in breach of those regulations. So that's how it's primarily used in terms of if you're over it, you're in trouble. But we take as Jared can attest to, if questioned, the Ops and Reg, a graduated approach to all our enforcement proceedings. It's not immediately a straight, here's a fine. We work with people to make sure that they are, working through the barriers that they might have to submitting the information and things like that. So it's primarily a compliance tool in terms of how the information is used.
And ultimately, it's a subjective decision made by bunks of ministers who make those judgments all the time and are not subject to the same practice framework in which local councils need to work. They have a different set of rules.
Gosh, you need to take yourself to the Middle East.
I'm writing that down, practice Frank.
Can I raise another point? Nothing
Sure.
to do with that. This is number 5, which is key native ecosystems. I understand that the government is proposing biodiversity credits. So could this be another matter which is looked at in policy and planning? Because that would apply to these.
Is it in the current document? I know there's
Through you,
further
Chair,
work.
it's not part of the National Direction
No.
consultation, but Minister Hoggard has given a recent speech about the continuing
Yeah.
work around voluntary biodiversity credits, which is something that we're very interested in, waiting a bit more detail on what those might look like.
And there is some briefing of officials and staff going on, and it's certainly something that, wearing my other hats at one stage on behalf of this council, there was quite a bit of discussion going on around where that work is going and not going. So it's an area in which the sector, Te Uru Kahika, has been expressing support for further work around biodiversity credits and changes to the ETS, and those were also expressed to the previous government.
Okay. All right, we have a mover and a seconder already, so just a minutes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Okay, moving on. It must be time for policy and planning. Before I look for a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes and receive them, any inaccuracies in there, anything that anybody wishes to discuss? I would like to hear from Finbar about this panelist, lead panelist being appointed.
Can I just jump in? In
Sure,
terms of the
yeah.
minutes, on page 23, it notes that Leader abstained from the vote regarding the TTR fast track application. I'd just like to add some context around that. Anyone reading this wouldn't know why she abstained. If we can just add something to the effect of being the Federated Farmers representative, they have no position on this, therefore Leader has abstained from participating in this. Just to give it some context for anyone who wants to read it. Otherwise, the minutes looked okay to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Finbar?
Right,
Okay,
through you, Chair. In terms of the panel, so correct that the panel convener has been appointed and there are two co-conveners. That person doesn't necessarily actually sit on the decision-making panel. Their job is to assign the panels across all the fast-track applications. That person was appointed some months ago and they are now working through the applications, and we understand that we should be, based on, there was a minute that went out on the EPA website a couple of weeks ago saying, from the co-convener who's leading this process, that they expect the panel should be stood up mid-July. So working back from that, we are expecting an invite from the EPA any day now, or maybe any week, around a hui with the panel convener to discuss who might be on the panel and the skills that you would need in terms of ensuring a robust consideration. In terms of those skills, the Act sets out a framework that panel is skills-based. It only provides, the only specific direction it provides in terms of what skills must be on it is that it explicitly says the panel must have someone with experience in Te Ao Māori and Māori development. Those other skills will be worked through with the panel convener, but it's reasonable to expect from a regional perspective, skills around planning so you can interpret policies, skills around writing good consent conditions, skills around being able to assess all the real technical information, and also having a good understanding of the regional situation and also iwi in the region are probably some things that at least personally jump to mind, that the kind of skills you'd be looking for. But we will be hopefully having that conversation with the panel convener and the other people involved in this process in the coming weeks. And then the process that we're proposing is that a nominee from the council would then be, after that discussion, we'll have a good idea, we can work through some names and bring that back to council for
And you'd look to basically fill any gap.
Yeah, so we're hoping to go into that with a bit of a long list of potential names, so then we can see how the panel's forming and where a nominee from the council can fill those gaps and make the most value.
For myself, I would think a planner is the next level down. I would be far more interested in seeing people who can sensibly interpret the scientific and the evidence, if it exists, of economic benefit.
Unless those panelists already exist.
Yes, unless they already exist. I mean, the Te Ao Māori appointee is a discrete thing, but those skill sets surely are more important than any understanding of matters policy, because otherwise people don't understand what they're looking at.
It's very important to get the right kind of person, and we have already sort of thought of some names of people who might fulfil that, and some of them are experts in Te Ao Māori and are Māori who would fit very well in this. I mean, it's suck and see, really, isn't it? Because we just do not know anything about how these things are going to actually be set up.
Let's wait and see what the convener is asking for. And as you're saying, the panel convener is not necessarily on the panel. She or he.
She
is the panel
She
convener.
can choose to be if she wants,
Okay,
but that would be her discretion.
How many panelists have they got a number, criteria?
Minimum, generally 4, can be more if warranted, due to the
So they have an
complexities
even
of the application. But then you appoint a chair. Chair has the casting vote.
Oh, right. So you've got 4 under the chair.
Yeah.
Do ministers have any oversight of this, or is the panel convener totally empowered at this point in time?
In terms of one of the key changes in the Act that was made as it went through the House was that the panel makes the decision. So the ministers are at arm's length, is my understanding from this point forward.
So it's a judge that's organising everything at the moment, isn't it?
The panel convener, I can't remember, sorry, off the top of my head. The person who's leading this one is one of the co-conveners, as opposed to the panel convener herself.
Okay, so we don't know who this person is.
We do. I just can't recall off the top of my head. She signed a minute on the application website, which is how I knew, but I can't recall her name off the top of my head. Sorry.
Can I ask one more question?
This has got nothing to do with being an accredited RMA commissioner. They don't necessarily have to have those qualifications.
Not necessarily, but again,
Okay.
that would be.
Be
I would accept that it'd be quite helpful to say. So
Okay.
having done that making good decisions course and having that just those decision making skills essentially.
Perhaps it's also helpful for Finbar just to repeat who can submit ultimately. That's a bit tricky too, isn't it? Because people like other councils may not actually get the chance to even submit.
And through you, Chair. So this is where this when we have this meeting with the EPA, hopefully that'll give us a good idea of who they think the relevant local authorities are. I mean, my interpretation is that we definitely are. Bit open for interpretation on whether the like of Horizons or South Taranaki District Council will be. So we'll wait and see in terms of what the judgment the EPA lands on. MFE did recently release a report around the treaty and iwi side of things, which made their recommendations on who they think the relevant parties are. That included the 3 southern iwi. It also included Taranaki iwi, and due to the links through fisheries, Ngāti Mutanga, Ngāti Tama and things. So potentially quite a wide net from the iwi side as well. But we'll again have to wait and see on where the EPA itself lands on those matters.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any criteria in which this panel is bounded by to make its decision? Has it got an environmental lean or an economic lean, or
There is
guidelines?
The Fast Track Approvals Act sets up quite a robust, I guess, framework for that. It does get complicated in that the primary tests are under the Fast Track Approvals Act, and the big one for this is, do the adverse effects sufficiently outweigh the regional and national economic benefits? That's the key test for the panel to look at on whether the application should be declined or not. In reaching that judgment, they are required to consider a whole range of things, primarily the stuff under the EEZ Act itself. But yeah, it's going to be a complicated one. There's many layers, and as has been pointed out, this has gone all the way up to the Supreme Court previously, so there's all that case law and things which factors in. But it is fair to say that in terms of the Fast Track Approvals Act, there's kind of that balancing between the regional national benefits and the adverse effects, but the structure of the Act puts the hand and tilts it in favour of the regional and national economic benefits.
I mean, logically, you'd have to expect, given that the Supreme Court bounced it, that there would have to be a substantially different application now.
Well, the Supreme Court, didn't they bounced it on environment issues, not the focus it is now. It's all about the money now.
But it's also about the negative.
Yeah, balancing one against the other.
So the key question through Chair is, has the regime sufficiently changed that there is that balancing act is fundamentally different? The regime clearly anticipates that some approvals can be declined. It's just that the stack of adverse effects has to be, it's fair to say, heavier than it was under the EEZ Act, and that'll be probably the focus of the panel.
And there isn't the specific requirement as there is under the RMA to consider treaty and iwi issues is there?
That still comes in under the EEZ Act, so that feeds in through that consideration, but the structure of the Act means that the panel has to give greater weight to the purpose of the Fast Track Approvals Act. But those matters are still very much relevant, they are just weighted less.
So do they have to make a decision, or can they say, we have insufficient data to make a decision and send it back to the applicant to gather more data? Or?
This is something we're working through at the moment. There's some interesting wording in the Act that we're seeking a bit of legal advice on how uncertainty factors into the process, because it's, from my reading, not exactly clear. This is new legislation, right?
Yeah.
So there's
and is this one of the first up?
One of the first.
Yeah.
2 other panels have been appointed so far.
And it's not just the information provided by the company that's doing this.
Yeah.
This is they get any information they want to get from anybody. And the other point that Susan was sort of alluding to is they've closed the door on judicial reviews too, haven't they?
That was incorrect. There is the ability to appeal the decision on points of law.
Which is different to judicial review.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, there are still appeal rights. They are curtailed though, as opposed to under the EEZ Act itself.
Do you want me to explain the difference?
Not now.
Well, if you want to.
I can do it in
Go on.
in 1 minute.
Go.
Judicial review focuses on process. So if you are supposed to be acting judicially, then you must act without bias, and you must only act on the information before you. So fairness type things. An appeal is you got the law wrong. You've misapplied the law. And so that is the sole concern there. They don't care about fairness. So one's about process, the other's about outcome.
They're trying to cut down sort of review. That's the big thing
Fine.
about it.
I don't thank you, Susan, and thanks, Neil Finbar. Thank you once again for your expert advice and knowledgeable answers to a whole bunch of questions. Yep. I didn't mind spending a bit longer on this, as it's very important for people who are very interested in this topic, obviously. Just note that within the policy and planning minutes, the resolution was to receive the memorandum. We noted that if council is deemed a relevant local authority, will be asked to nominate a person to the decision-making panel for the Taranaki VTM project application and provide comment on the application, comment being like a submission, and noted that council must approach the project application without predetermination, focusing its comments on regulatory tests, robust assessment of the relevant documents. So that is all within. We have just so that you're all aware, and I don't think that after this discussion anything has changed. I don't think there's any desire to go back and change anything that the policy and planning committee.
I do think we need to be
agreed
really careful about communication about this issue, more than, I mean, we're always careful. There, but it's just a useful thing to remind ourselves that it's not helpful if we're expressing opinions we think informally at a social gathering or something like that. It has the potential of coming back to bite us. So I think we need to keep our discussion to this room and to this group of people rather than making it broader, so we don't risk undermining the effectiveness that we might otherwise wish to bring to bear on behalf of the Regional Council.
I feel that individuals off the record can have any discussions that they like. They might form their personal views, but as far as speaking on behalf of the council, or in a formal matter, yes, well, I agree, and I think this is the council position, and hence we need to. Why I read that out again, just so that we can be clear as to what our position is and why. Anita?
Kia ora. I understand that we're clear as a council, but it's become very obvious to me that the community is not clear as to what we're trying to achieve by maintaining neutrality. And I have been saying this for a few weeks now, that even if a statement from this council is that we don't yet have a position for all these reasons, we haven't yet told the wider community. And I've been getting feedback for ages, being attacked on social media and private for not having a position. And all I would really like to see is this council at least do what was asked for this morning and provide the community with the information as to the process, as to where we are in the process, why we don't have a position yet, because it enables us to stay in the process until the point where we can have a position. It's okay to talk to a bunch of people here, but we've got 100,000 people out there who don't understand why we aren't saying something.
And frankly, these people came back and said the same thing as they said the last time when we made it clear the last time.
Yeah,
So they either weren't listening.
It bothers me.
I understand that very, very valid point.
Yeah.
And I know, obviously, they're going to be making some sort of a decision at Western District Council today, either to support that motion or reject it. Would we be able to, and would you all agree if we put out a media release today, so it can tie into whatever commentary is done on that as to our position and why?
And I'm just interested.
Star, I'm
No, is
looking at
anyone
Star.
else getting
Yeah,
feedback?
no, I agree. I agree. That would be good.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Are we all happy with that? Just to clearly state it rather than just confirm our minutes and that's all.
Personally, I think we should just wait the 24 hours and let the process in New Plymouth go without any input from this council. And hearing what Anita is saying, I agree, but you know, it needs to be out there, but in simple layman terms. And I think let the process go with New Plymouth, and then we put our stance either they for it or against it, but we put our stance because I'd like to think we're coming out prior to.
I'm not saying prior to. I'm just wary of the fact that we will be mentioned. I'm sure.
Yeah,
in
again.
any.
Well, we can make that statement.
What
So
harm
it'd be good to
can
have a
there be
statement.
put in writing, as we have consistently said, that there are 3 steps along the way that potentially involve the TRC. Step number 1 is appointment of someone to the panel.
As per here.
Yep, yeah. We just need to keep saying it.
Yeah.
Step number 2 is that we would have an ability to be heard on the application itself. And step number 3 is, as you've said, that in the event that the application is granted, we would have an ability to be heard on conditions. And so we need to keep repeating that message, and that until and unless the panel member, until unless we've had an opportunity to receive and consider and take advice about the application, we cannot possibly have a position on it.
As a council, until we're getting that report back, that will be us providing the comments, because at that point we're doing that. We're doing the report with the economist and the ecologist and
Yes,
everything.
And we're also reviewing their evidence and their application.
That's the sort of evidence that we would rely on in order to form an opinion.
With the key message being, it keeps us in the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, that's the key message.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate about this, especially now, because basically I've been accused of being a sellout and having been bought off by TTR. So
Seriously? What kind of car are you driving?
exactly. So I think this is a real risk to our reputation as an organisation.
But we just need to keep pushing that clean
Yeah.
explanation. This is where we
That's
are
right.
at
Our
the
position
moment.
is we don't have a position at the moment.
Let's
Yes,
reiterate our position, because I will note that we're in public.
And you
forum
might
right now.
remember that the last time I put it to them that, I think I got Finbar to confirm that our position might be that we maintain neutrality, that we support the application or we oppose the application. But we simply can't possibly know where we're going to be on that spectrum
Well, we need our own
until and unless we've
evidence.
actually reviewed the evidence and the application and understand it.
Steve, sorry.
Look, we will do some work with Jason and the team to make that position you're adopting clear. Let's be clear, though, that may not satisfy everybody.
No.
Some would argue there are other options available to you to make political statements, if you so wish, as opposed to exercising the decision-making role you have to make in relation to this.
Well, we're not politicians. That's been established, hasn't it?
So
The thing is, this
can I
is going
ask
to take
Mr.
a
Chairman?
long time too, isn't it? This is going to not be something that's decided.
The bulk of our role will be done probably
Yes, I know
within a
that,
month.
But as far as the panel is concerned, they're going to probably
Oh,
be quite.
If you think about the first two phases, which is the appointment of the panel member, as Finbar said on the website, you're talking about having the panel appointed by mid-July. That's 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
So actually, and indeed this is a relevant point to note, that suggests we might need to have a council meeting in the next 3 weeks for you and a PNP committee meeting for you to make a decision. We don't have those scheduled in the next 3 weeks. And then there'll be a submission, which is all actually, again, subject to us being determined to be a relevant local authority. Again, that decision has not been made as yet. So that's actually the first step. Are we even in the room at all? We think we will be, but that decision hasn't been made, or if it has been made, has not been communicated to us in a formal sense.
And even if we are not, we lose our credibility as a submitter if we are making decisions prematurely.
We can't make a submission if we're not a relevant local authority.
We have some ability to present, do we
No,
not?
no.
Nothing at all.
No, nothing at all.
So these people get nothing, they get no opportunity.
That's
to
one of their
speak.
concerns. That is one of their fundamental concerns, is that the number of submitters is very limited.
What's it limited to?
Through you, Chair. Great question. So relevant local authorities, relevant iwi authorities, and as indicated by what MFE has put out, that will potentially be all the post-government
All 8.
settlement entities in Taranaki, including iwi o Taranaki, Tupuni Narahu as well, but we'll wait and see. Then there's a bunch of other stuff as well that captures like existing interests and things, and then there is a discretionary provision for the panel convener, I think, or maybe the panel, to invite written comment from anyone else that they.
So we could only get in on that.
I would say 99.5% chance we are a relevant local authority.
Yeah.
But on the off chance that it's not, there would be an option of writing to the panel convener to ask that they use their discretion to include us.
Because Finbar, they must have one, correct? A relevant local authority.
Yeah, I guess you're true. They have to have one because they have to appoint someone.
So if not us, who?
South Taranaki potentially.
We've already
but it's
declared their
more than likely, as Finbar says. Okay, I'm quite happy to move on. We've got and thank you, Steve and Jocelyn. If we can put out a statement, I think that would be very helpful along those lines that we've discussed. Okay.
I moved, did I?
You've moved, yeah. Second up. Thanks, Susan. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? There are none. Okay, so moving on. Still confirming minutes. Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes, 16th of June. Tom.
Yeah, just on page 31, under item 8, which is the Taranaki Stadium, just want to reinforce those comments made at that time from the committee chair. There's an eye missing in the chair. That's not really what I was going to say. No. But you know, on the 11th for the opening, that was a fantastic night. And I think all those that attended had a really good evening. And we got really positive feedback from, well, just about all of there. I didn't hear any negatives whatsoever. And some of the ones that were opposed to the stadium at the beginning certainly silenced them to see what was actually delivered. And as we state here, you know, like Mike and the team, and it has been a team, Mike was part of that, and it affects all staff and council and everything. You know, there was a lot of negativity through that period of our decision, and we stood fast, and the staff got criticised for, you know, for the decision we made, and that's hard on everybody. So I would personally like to thank everybody in the chain and for doing what we did, and the outcome as well. And we know it has been difficult for many, but I personally want to thank you on behalf of the Taranaki Regional Council for doing what we did and to see what we've ended up with. So that's just want to add to that.
Thank you, Tom. Wholeheartedly support those sentiments. Yes.
The stock truck effluent strategy review can someone just help me on that? Is it just looking at what we've got, or is there look to reduce or increase the services available, or?
Through you, Chair.
quite the contrary. The situation with stock truck effluent is that anecdotally we are of the view that the current system is working well.
Yes.
And indeed, the incident that occurred in the Stratford Township in the last few weeks indicated that public acceptance of stock truck effluent disposal on roads is zero.
Yep.
The strategy is many years old, and it's just time for a review.
Right.
We are not anticipating significant change.
Right. Because there's no new funding. Did I see a central government pushing at it again, or somebody's pushing at it again? Or, I know we're probably one of the better regions for stock truck effluent disposal, but that doesn't mean say we can't do better.
Through you, Chair, it's not a top priority in terms of funding, but it certainly, as you correctly noted, there are other regions, and particularly our northern neighbours, who would prefer to have improved stock truck effluent disposal facilities. As I say, our anecdotal understanding at this stage is that there is not a significant issue in Taranaki, and the review will confirm or not that.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just make a comment, Chair. I think we've seen now that the facilities, and I think the review will show that the facilities are working well. What we're actually seeing, and Mike referred to it in the Stratford situation, is an illegal dumping.
It should be dealt with as such.
It should be dealt with as such. We can't do anything about people if they want to dump in an illegal place, and we do see that occasionally, and they need to be attended to if we can find the culprit.
Is that a criminal offence? Or
Yes,
the
it
police?
is. Yes, it can be. Yes, there is some outs, but deliberate is definitely an offence, and the council would have to react to that as well.
Yeah.
And the council has reacted if we can find the culprit.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we're receiving the minutes of
So I'll
the
move,
recommendations therein. You'll move. Thank you very much. Alan, will you second that?
Happy to.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Transport Committee meeting 5th of June. Alan.
I'm happy with as presented there. The main thing probably to highlight has been the release of the public transport plan was given to us, and also the submission that was put forward from that committee regarding the changes to driver licensing to try and obviously reduce the fatalities and risk of youth in their driving. So that was a well put together submission, so thanks to the staff for that. Handled all the notes that came from the different members, so that was submitted on behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from within that? Tom, would you like?
I think one of the things that are not going to go away, and that's on item 6 on page 36, is the forestry transport impacts to the region. And somehow we have to try and make sure that we improve their compliance or non-compliance somehow. It seems to be getting, not improving, and the damage to the road is and the infrastructure on the roads, bridges and things like that are becoming far too common. And I don't know how we tighten up on that, but we certainly got to do a lot better. I mean, we used to see milk tankers are up and down the road as a prominently truck travelling to north, and now we see logs. So we really have to tighten up somehow on the way that they are transported through our province.
And following up from that, the main problem was, of course, the local TAs not having the opportunity to tax them or target them for the damage to their roads. They don't have that ability to be able to put a per tonne or get a revenue back from road use and those sorts of things. So that's sort of where we need this to go to push nationally.
Will that lead to a submission or something?
I think it will.
Yeah.
Definitely
Good to see more of them on the trains.
It is good.
But
Very good.
so do I gather from that then we're not getting our share of the road user charges that are being paid on those trucks?
That would be a simplistic view. Yes, very much so. We're not getting our share full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and road user could be one way of targeting it.
Yeah.
I think you'll find through the chair that the road use collected here is probably a little bit more than what we're getting. Like it's up over, used to be about 110% spent at Taranaki,
where some areas are down to as low as 60 and 70. So you'd have to check with the NZTA to see what the
Right.
the
So we,
payback is.
we shouldn't complain too much because at the moment we're doing all right in that regard. But
We were doing all right. I'm not sure how it sits.
yeah, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
well with Mail Messenger going ahead, I would suggest.
Once
Bring it
goes
on.
ahead, bring it on. Okay.
I wouldn't comply.
Yeah, it'll only be another 5. 2
Oh,
years?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the else is.
Happy to move it.
Thank you. I've got to move it. Tom, one second. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye.
All right.
All right, remits. Item number 9, remits for local government New Zealand annual general meeting. Nicole.
Morena, thank you, and through you, Chair. The paper before you today is to prepare for the upcoming local government New Zealand LGNZ AGM, which is happening in July. At that meeting, 5 remits have been submitted by other councils. They'll be debated on and voted on. The Chair will be attending as Council's single voting delegate. The purpose of the agenda item today is for you to consider each of the 5 remits and decide on Council's position. For each remit, you'll have 3 options. You can either direct the Chair to support it, oppose it, or provide no formal direction and allow the Chair to use his discretion and vote based on the debate at the AGM. And that back to you
Thank you.
to direct, and we'll answer any questions as you need.
Okay, this process is just to go through them one at a time. Do we have any opinions on number 1, the security systems payments?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
I wondered whether it might be useful to agree that there may be a number of these things that we just allow you to have discretion on, because you're going to be hearing the arguments about these things and are so relevant. So would it be worthwhile you just asking us if there are any here that we particularly want to discuss, and otherwise I'd be happy to move that you be given the power to act.
Thank you. I would be happy to go with that.
Yeah, I just think, but on the first one, I'd just
Yes.
like to comment, is that, security payments to councillors, where are you going to use that, and what are you going to do? You're going to be paying for a security guard and all this sort of thing. I think it's a bit of an overkill, and I think, we've got to be careful of our personal safety and making sure, and we do that all the time anyway, so I don't really support that one.
I would say this may allude to security cameras and people whose homes.
And it's going to be horses for courses.
Yes.
If you've seen to be someone who's promoting something that's unpopular, you may, and you live remotely, for instance, you may want some security cameras up.
And it's another step. I mean, one step is abuse on Facebook, but it's another.
Remotely, you don't
elevate that to the next level, and someone's spray painting a fence. I don't know, but I think that it highlights that there are some members and other councils who are being targeted. That's all. Yep. Anita.
I actually support this. I know personally of elected members who are scared for their personal safety, especially women elected members. There's a high-profile case of a former mayor who had a home invasion. So I think this is critical, and while it may not affect us, because we live in Taranaki where it's beautiful and the people are mostly awesome,
Beautiful.
other elected members are suffering greatly, so I strongly support this.
Case by case too.
As I read this is an allowance up to if it's deemed necessary.
It's not a, we're all not going to
Not a
get it.
payout.
No.
No.
Or do we want it?
Any other comments on that one, or as Neil suggests, on any of the other ones? Yeah.
I just have one, and it's really that aligning public and school bus services.
Yes.
I'm dead against it. I just think the rural services are going to miss out. The education system was set up to give a subsidy or a support to get rural children to school. It will definitely benefit the urban areas where they could use those funds to better service the high population or the public transport services, but for the rural community will really miss out when it's, at the moment, it states in there that it's done by education officials, and they say that makes no sense from page 49. Well, it's not done by education officials, it's done by a specialised team, and there is a lot of criteria in it. They have per capita rates and look at transport assistance and maybe give assistance in the forms of a minibus to Makahu school when they have to provide their drivers and get their kids to school. And I think they will miss out if it comes under a service aligned with council. So ideal probably for the bigger services where the services are in a city or in a major town, but rurally we would be seriously disadvantaged by doing it. So I wouldn't support it at all.
Okay.
And I support that one too. I see those rural people definitely missing out, and they are a little bit even now.
I'm happy.
But would that not suggest that there is an area that can be simplified and economies made, provided the criteria are put in to get that?
Can you just be clear, the proposal is that it be an option that individual councils can make? This council may well, if it got passed, this council may well agree with perspective you're both putting forward, we don't want to do it. All this is doing is allowing, if some regional councils decide they do want to do it, they can run the argument with the Ministry of Ed to do it. So it's completely discretionary, which is one of the things put into this proposed remit explicitly.
Right, so if we did support the remit, we would be doing it on behalf of, knowing our view, would be,
well, giving yourself the discretion to make the decision, whereas at the moment you don't. So
I'd be happy not to have that discussion, not to have that choice, because I think the rural people will be disadvantaged if it goes out to a council. The Ministry of Ed and their funding will cut it somehow, will shorten it back. I'm sure they will, as they do when they do these sorts of things. And I think the rural will be seriously disadvantaged. I don't think they should be given that option. The regional council isn't in a position to work out how Makahu kids get to school and work out the logistics of all that. They aren't set up for that. And they do have a specialised team at the ministry to do that. I think we should leave it with them.
Just, Alan, are you talking about Taranaki, or are you taking the national perspective?
National perspective would all fit under the same banner.
So you're talking,
but Taranaki really would suffer, I
okay.
feel.
So, but when you're talking rural, you're talking about
Rural New
nationally.
Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're not compelled to do this. It's just an option, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's a good option, but
Yeah, so,
full stop. It shouldn't come back to a council to try and run school services so that they could have.
Good point, but yeah, sorry, and I just had some other, if you're ready for other comments, other remits.
What's the space? He's coming.
Oh, the next one. So on that one, do we all want me to vote against or neutral?
Two of us do.
You do.
I'm happy to move that you vote against it.
Okay, we'll vote against.
I'm a bit troubled still by the fact that our delegate is going to go there and is going to, he hears what you say and listens, but I'd like to have him having the independence to be able to listen to the arguments and come up with his best judgment. I respect that.
Thank you for your faith in me. Are you happy for me to?
And he will do that. He will do that.
discretionary
What we're
take?
saying is giving him a
Thank
guide
you
to
for the
vote
feedback
against it.
and the guide.
But in evidence
Yes.
that he can compel him to vote for it, well, we'll give him that discretion.
I'm happy for this committee to direct them to how to vote it. That's what we're here for.
Okay, thank you so much. And number 5, local government arrangements to achieve better balance.
We skipped over 3. 3's not us anyway.
Oh, did we jump? Oh, sorry.
That's the only one we wanted.
3's not us anyway.
3's not us.
Yeah,
Joint management agreements, do you want to talk about?
yes.
Okay.
I'm in favour of this one. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think it's a no-brainer, to be honest. And number 5, I'm struggling a little bit with. I don't quite understand how they think it's going to be achieved. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one. Well, how do they think we're going to achieve that?
Steve, any guidance on number 5?
I mean, it's pretty broad that LGNZ works with government and councils to review current local government arrangements, including the functions and structure of local government. Don't we do that all the time? Wasn't that the future for local government work that got shelved? Isn't the government now coming out with new declarations about how they see local government and our
Yeah,
validity of existence?
look, I think it's important to see those statements were, certainly some of them by Minister Jones in particular, were made as very clearly being proposed New Zealand First remits to their party conference. And yes, he was expressing a personal view as a New Zealand First Member of Parliament, but he was being quite clear that I'm taking a couple of remits to our New Zealand First Party conference, for which I may or may not get support, but this is my view. Now, I also see the Prime Minister saying personally he would support a conversation about regional government. Now, actually, go back to Minister Jones. If you listen to what he said, he actually also said not just regional councils, but the local government sector as a whole. And he made comparisons to Sir Brian Elwood and the 1989 reforms as being something that would be very helpful and appropriate to look at for the local government sector as a whole, given the broad range of reforms and other issues going on as well. And of course, the Prime Minister is saying my personal view, whereas their official National Party policy, as I understand it anyway, and happy to correct it, is not this triennium. Maybe next triennium. So they may well have a policy position going into the next elections as well. But obviously we need to wait and see what emerges from the National Party remit process once that goes through.
Mr Bishop has said, look,
Yes.
I've got too many pots on the stove. I don't want to get this one in.
No.
And Minister Watts at the same event at which Minister Jones speaking talked about local water done well, RMA reform and effectiveness and efficiency of local government, and indeed the acting Prime Minister also said until local government learns to manage its expenditure, don't expect any more revenue. So there were some messages in there that need to be put into the relevant context.
Somebody, Steve, was tying, I can't remember which of the ministers was tying it into 2027 and the next long-term plan, that they would want to have some decisions made during that process, be it the end of regional councils or be it something along those
else.
lines.
Yeah.
That is not far away. That is just 1 year, just over 1 year into the next term.
Yeah. And again, realistically, to have a major reform process like that, you would need to be starting something this side of the national elections. Now, we can't. Obviously, government will make decisions it wants to make, and I'm certainly not saying they won't make those decisions. You have a couple of high-profile ministers who are making some statements, including the Prime Minister. So we need to wait and see what happens in their processes, because we've certainly had a few surprises this triennium, and there may well be more. But in terms of those very recent statements, it is helpful to go back to what was actually said, and it is in the public domain that the recording of that event.
And you're right, Shane Jones just says New Zealand first, and I think they're quite flying. It's too early.
And he's saying they want to keep regions, don't they, isn't it, Mr Jones?
Well, he's placing a strong emphasis on regions, yes. Just don't read
Not
that.
necessarily regional councils.
Not regional councils.
Didn't he say something in this last week about wanting to keep regions?
No.
No, he said
Councils and
the
regions.
focus on regions has been clear through, in fact, the Labor Party policy was focusing on regions for RMA, I'll use the term RMA planning. That was the previous government's policy as well, as it is this government's policy from the statements they have made and the brief that they gave to the expert advisory group.
I think what we've got to worry more about is actually capping rates. I think that is something that really sounds like it's coming.
So back to my remit.
Yes.
I understand the intent. I just don't know that I would have thought this is our Gen Z business as usual, and it didn't need to be in remit form. So however you feel on the day, I think.
The President has been going to different events seeking this. The metro sector obviously obliged.
Okay.
So I
Well,
think
I
all
think
in all,
it's
it's going to
worth
be it'll be a very interesting conference, and with all of this talk about regional councils and their validity post RMA reform, etc., and what value do we add, there'll be a lot of robust discussions to be had behind the scenes as well, and putting our case forward very strongly to whoever will listen. So
moving
forward,
on that,
forward
Chair,
to
I'll-
it, and I will definitely go into bat for you and us.
I'll move the recommendations and giving you the
Thank
vote
you.
on our behalf.
Okay. Seconder, Neil, thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
Are you, sorry, are you, who else is going to conference?
You and I?
Oh,
That's great.
if you need a second, if something happens and you need a second to sit with you, I'll be
Yes.
happy to do
Oh,
that.
yes, please come along. Yeah. Good morning. And fill in for me if something happens to me.
And just give him a whack if he gets.
Vote via text.
We don't want this sort of
I'll arrange
aggression
for
around
you
our
to
table.
list as the alternate, councillor Bigham, we won't arrange
Thank
any
you.
other
Yes,
kind of.
perfect. Thank you. Mike, oh no, Nicole, sorry. Item number 10, extraordinary vacancy on the regional council.
Thank you, and through you again, Chair. The paper has been prepared to address the extraordinary vacancy on the council following the passing of our colleague, Councillor David Lean. Under the Local Electorate Act, when the vacancy occurs this close to an election, council is required to formally decide on a path forward. Prepared a paper there for you that has three options. The first being to hold a by-election, which isn't required by law, it could be quite costly and impractical at this stage given we're about to go into an election period. You have the option to appoint a new member to fill the seat or the vacancy, or you can choose to leave that vacancy unfilled until the general elections in October.
And I think we just move on that one, D, item D, leave it unfilled.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm happy to support that.
Yeah, so we have Tom and Susan, move a second, supporting all the recommendations on page 51. Yep. Oh, hang on, resolves to either for the emergency vote.
Yeah.
No.
Leave it unfilled.
Leave it unfilled. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Those in favour, please say aye. Submission on regulatory standards bill, page 54. Finbar.
Through you, Chair, I'll take the paper as read. Submissions on the regulatory standards bill closed yesterday, so you see that we're seeking your retrospective endorsement of our submission. The submission was circulated via email for draft comment to both all councillors and also representatives on the Policy and Planning Committee, and you'll see some notes in there around how a change that was made to the submission regarding some feedback on that issue of regulatory takings. The submission, we've kept it to the point and quite targeted on three key concerns from our perspective. One, the lack of any reference to the treaty, the treaty and its principles, which is a notable omission, and you'll see our rationale in the submission. The second, that as currently drafted, our interpretation is that this bill would require any local government bylaw to go through the process of being assessed against these principles, and there's been no consideration of the potential cost and issues that they might impart on local government, and that should be considered. And then finally, that some of the principles themselves would fundamentally undermine our ability to manage environmental effects, particularly that emphasis on private property rights over the public good, and that issue of regulatory takings, potentially creating a situation where the council would have to compensate landowners for not polluting, which there's a lot of complexities in that space, and you'll see that we just emphasise a lot more work needs to go into working through that than has currently been provided in the bill. And I'd note there as well that is also something that's been given more detailed consideration through the RMA reforms. Leave it there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Finbar. And it was a very succinct submission and to the point. And I'd just like to note that given the timeframes, I think that process was very good. Everybody had a good opportunity to have a look at it and provide some feedback.
Just two questions, Finbar. One was that understood that actually this doesn't override acts of Parliament, does it? It is just kind of like the Bill of Rights in some ways, where they have to advise that this is an issue that people have to consider. So there's that aspect. The other one is, I understand that New Zealand First again has said that they won't support the thing unless it's got certain changes. Do you know what that would be?
Through you, Chair, you are correct that it's not binding in terms of these provisions. You would have to, a minister would have to explain if an act, or we would if we had a bylaw, you'd have to explain why you were breaching these principles. But the conclusion in terms of some of the commentary is that while it's not binding, it would effectively, it would still tilt the scales and make it more difficult to consider some of those other principles in lawmaking. And I do not, unfortunately, I do not know the position of New Zealand First on this and what some of the matters that they've raised that need addressing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, things like the Bill of Rights Act do still have very practical consequences for you, and you end up arguing about them in judicial review processes, even though Parliament has the right to ignore the bill of the breach of a particular provision that's been made, as long as they're made aware of it. So there is a cost, particularly to local government, and a number of these things that get put in there for the reasons they are.
Unintended consequences.
Well, certainly I'm been deeply involved in a judicial review process where Bill of Rights Act was one of the critical arguments against the council's position. So a lot of cost and process when ultimately Parliament was legislating to address the issue that was being debated through the judicial review process.
The recommendations are there on page 54. Mover, please. Second out. Mike, would you like to second that?
I would. Thank you.
Gotcha. Donald, you can do the next one. All those in favour, please. Aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. We have a mover for the meeting dates recommendation on page 98. That will be Donald. Seconder.
No, I'd like to comment first, and that's the Regional Transport Committee on the 5th of July is actually a Saturday. We do love coming here, but I'm probably not going to come on that day. And the next Regional Transport Committee date is actually going to be the 28th of August, not the 5th of July on a Saturday.
We'll make it Sunday.
Thank you for that correction, noting that correction.
With that correction, I'm happy to second it.
Thank
We'll
you.
give you
very
time
much.
to
Still
half.
moving that? Still moving that, Donald?
Yeah, that's right. So, did you think we needed another meeting, or you'll, if that's the case, you'll...
We'll call an extraordinary or urgent meeting if we need it.
Right.
But just really signalling we are quite likely to need at least one, if not two of them.
So you're not at that point yet?
Not at that point yet, but just really just signalling there's a distinct possibility of that being required.
Okay.
All those in favour, please. Aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
There are none. I will move that we
Second, Chair.
go into public excluded now. Have a seconder. You. All those in favour, please. And let's just break for a minute.
Good idea.